Fjelheim. I'm from the Norwegian University of Sciences. Today I'm going to talk about evolution of flowering time in response to photoperiod, and its work that I've been doing together with my good colleague Jill Preston, University of Vermont. And first I'm just going to say a few words about the grass family, because I'm going to talk more about grasses and more about this Pooideae subfamily that Marian talked about. And the grass family is one of the largest and most important plant families in the world. It contains 12,000 species, and it contains important crop species like wheat, barley, maize, and rice. And 3 of those species, wheat, maize, and rice, alone provides more than 60% of the world's caloric intake. It's a very important family. So this is just a phylogeny showing relationships between subfamilies in the grasses. And we again divide the subfamilies into 2 larger monophyletic groups, and it's the packmadclade, which are the tropical grasses, and then we have the bobclade, which is the more subtropical and temperate grasses. So the bobclade consists of Adaptation, where you find rice, bambusoide, which are the bamboos, and Pooideae, which is temperate grasses, and this is my subfamily I work with. So Pooideae, it's a species-rich subfamily consisting of more than 4,000 species, and most of these are included in this monophyletic group that we call the core Pooideae. And sister to the core Pooideae is the model species Brachypodium. And in the core Pooideae, we find important forage grasses and cereals like wheat, barley, rye, and oats, and forage grasses that we use in the northern temperate zone, like ryegrass, fescue, and timothy. And of course, we know a lot about these species. Wheat, barley are important cereal species and important for food production. Of course, the traits that we need to control when we breed these species are traits like frost tolerance, winter hardness, and also flowering time, because it's important to flower at the exact same right time in the season. So we need to adapt those cultivars to local climate. Of course, the same traits that are important for adopting cultivars to local climate is also important for the wild grasses just growing outside the field or in the forests. And these are the traits that we are interested in, the traits that adapt these species to local climate in the temperate zone. So we know a little bit, or we know a lot about these traits from a handful of species in the core Pooideae, but we study these traits in the Pooideae as a whole, and going back and ask, what did the Pooideae ancestor look like? If we look, this you have seen a couple of times already today, but this shows the distribution of Pooideae species as percentage of the total grass flora. So if we travel to Norway here, where I'm from, and go out and sample grasses, 90% of those species will be Pooideae species. But if we go further down to the tropics, there are hardly any Pooideae species at all. And basically, only 1 out of those 12 subfamilies that we have in the grasses actually made it out of the tropics and took over the entire northern temperate zone. So our question is basically, what made this subfamily so well adapted to temperate climate? So Marian has already told you about some of the cold adaptation stuff we have done. And now we are looking into flowering time. So we have a model that we know work for barley and wheat. So they have a 2-step induction of flowering. So first, in the autumn, they are vegetative. We do not want them to flower in the autumn. So to prevent autumn flowering, they need a prolonged period of cold, which we call vernalization, and in the nature, this period is the winter. When they pass the winter, they prepare to flower. And of course, they can't flower until it's safe to flower in the spring, like passing the period where they can experience late spring frost, because the flowers are very sensitive to frost. So we say that after fertilization they are competent to respond to long days. And then when the days are long enough, they will actually go into flowering. So the species, they take in cues from the environment to know the exact right time during the growth cycle to flower. And this is either temperature and vernalization. We heard a talk by Jill earlier today about that. But we are looking into the day length responses. So we ask, was the Pooideae ancestor flowering in response to long days? And is this kind of the prevailing response throughout the whole Pooideae? And the next is that we think that maybe short days also can function as a cue for winter in northern temperate areas. But we don't know that, because early in the evolution of Pooideae, as Marian said, it wasn't really that cold. So maybe they used another cue for winter in the beginning. And this could be short days. So we are looking into those two traits. So we imagine that the Pooideae ancestor actually evolved from a species that responded to short days to flower, which is important in more tropical areas, and they do not require fertilization. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we grew an awful lot of species, very many. We have tested more than 50 species of the Pooideae for flowering. So we tested them for different treatments, very simple experiments. So we divided the individuals in each species into two, and we checked where do they flower the fastest, in long days or in short days, or maybe there's no difference. Okay, so don't even try to read this. I'm just showing you that we have done experiment on many species. And we have results from throughout the Pooideae. So we have spread, we have flowering data, or we have tried to get flowering data at least, from all the major lineages. So Brachylidium never germinated in our experiments, but we have Nardus, Lydium, all of the basal ones, and also core Pooideae species. And what we find, so here is an ancestral reconstruction of the three responses that we measured for. So either they are long day responsive, which are in blue, short day responsive in green, or day length neutral, so there's no difference. Also, a bunch of species didn't actually flower in our experiments, so they are shown in gray. And what we find is that long day responsiveness is common throughout the whole Pooideae. And although we don't have very much data in the basal ponies here, the ancestor is reconstructed as long day responsive. We also find several reversals to day length insensitivity. Actually 4 reversals to day length insensitivity. This is not very surprising. It's known a lot from wheat and barley and other forage grass, other cereals, that it's relatively easy and simple mutations in photoperiod genes that makes them insensitive to flower. But what surprised us a lot was that we actually found a whole clade of Nacella species that responded to short days. So they preferentially flower in short days. Except from this Acnella here, but that's a hybrid, so it actually belongs somewhere else. So it's actually a monophyletic short day responsive group of species. We were very surprised by that. Of course, I say that this is a northern temperate group, but it's also a southern temperate group, although they're mostly in the north. the nacellas are actually a group that has moved through Northern America and down to Southern America, and you find them actually in montane tropical regions here, where they actually flower under short days. So this has controlled, so it's the transitions between day length states is not very simple, but and it probably controls where they can be, where they diversify. Okay, the next question was, can short days signal winter? So can they replace cold vernalization as a cue for winter? So if you remember this figure again, so here we know that vernalization signals winter and make them competent to respond to long days, but could we maybe get the same if we give them short days? So we did a simple experiment again. We gave half of the individuals per species only long days, but half of them we gave a period of short days and then shifted them back to long days again. Now we had shown that most of them are actually long day responsive. So here we targeted those species that we actually knew were going to flower. So we skipped these tricky ones that were early diverging because we never made them flower. So we have representatives from the stipe, Melissa, Pooideae, Bromid, Trixie, and Pooideae. And what did we find? Yes, short days can signal winter. So we found this response very strongly in both the stipe, Melissa, and Trixie. So, okay, so I didn't find it in Pooideae, Bromid, and Pooideae, but that's just because I didn't induce enough flowers, or so it doesn't mean that this response doesn't exist here. It's just that I couldn't show it. Didn't have good enough flowering data. So yes, for all of these species, or many species in these tribes, they respond very strongly to short day vernalization, as we call it. Okay, so what we think is that long day flowering may have played an important role in the initial transitioning to temperate regions. So it seems that transitioning between long days and short days is not very easy. So many of those tropical grasses maybe never evolved a long day response and hence could not move into temperate regions. So we think that evolving this long day response has been important. So, and we find that transitions between long day and short day flowering, they are rare, but they are important for the shifts between regions, and they have facilitated this shift of the nacella into southern tropical regions. And the short day vernalization data is something that we really haven't analyzed very well yet, so I haven't any proper reconstruction of that, but short day vernalization can function as a reliable cue for winter, and also may have played a role in the very early lineages when the temperature wasn't stably cold for longer periods. It could have functioned as a reliable cue for winter and help the grasses to the spring where they could respond to the longer days. And this research was funded by the Research Council of Norway and the National Science Foundation of the United States of America. Thank you. So I think we have time for maybe one question.
So do you have any hypotheses as to what would drive the transition to a short day flowering life history strategy? Because I guess you would think that, you know, long days there's more light available for higher photosynthesis. It seems like generally they'll be
Yeah, but we think that, you know, like in more subtropical regions, the plants would avoid flowering in the middle of the summer because it would be drought, and so it would be better for them to flower during the winter season when the days are short.